8th grade in civics.
And I do think they do a really good job talking
Yeah.
about, like, just because you see it doesn't make it,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think science, like, unless you're working with journals every day and reading journals, like, all the time, they don't make sense.
What's up?
True.
It's 7 o'clock. Wow.
I don't know.
We just help.
Have I not made it clear?
I mean, I get hives if I'm late. I get like upset.
Oh yeah, no, I get.
I'm one of those
like,
people.
physically
Like I
sick.
get upset.
We need one more, though, right?
can't.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I did have to drop Isabel
Alright,
off at the community
Michelle.
house, so it was convenient.
Whoop. Michelle. Yep. And we've got Anna, so we've got.
All right, we got a quorum. Hi, Anna. Can you see us?
You know,
Microphone.
Can you hear us? Do you know where I was though? So, 2 weeks ago, I was a safety marshal on an adaptive and able-bodied veteran ride. So I escorted like 300 veterans from DC out to
Mr. Tracy, do we feel like Anna's all set up there?
on Thursday.
He's going to connect her audio. Anna, can you give us a test?
Here, coming to you live from Western Massachusetts.
Shit. I mean, it's connected. Let me see if I can turn it up and you can hear it.
Okay.
You guys sound great. I can hear you just fine.
Yeah, I can hear. If it were quiet in here, I could probably hear.
Everybody has to be very quiet.
Yeah.
The gentleman from HW Cam is going to try and tweak the settings on this. Try it now.
This is Anna Siedzik broadcasting live from Western Massachusetts.
Yes, yes, I can hear
Yeah,
that.
we got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you could do more, it would be
Don't
good.
forget about me over here in the corner.
I love it. We could see you too.
How are you guys going to see me to vote?
We can
Can
see
you
you.
see me?
We can see
Oh,
you.
We can see you. We
Okay.
can see
Turn the
you.
computer around.
Okay.
It's like Max Headroom.
No, that's an 80s reference.
That's a reference that no one understands.
Unless you grew up during the 80s, then you understand.
I'm trying.
Greg.
Max Headroom is like the original Zoom.
Thank you. I was trying. Okay. All right. Are we on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I'm going to jump on my Zoom real quick.
All right. I would like to call the meeting to order at 7:03. We have, okay, Anna, can you hear us?
Yep.
Yes, I can.
Okay, great, and we can hear you, terrific. All right, I will ask us to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we do have one member, Anna Siedzik, who is participating remotely this evening. And is she on the regular Zoom or
She's on a separate Zoom.
She's on a separate Zoom, okay, but we are ready with the citizens comment Zoom, correct?
So far, no one is here, yes.
Okay. All right, so I will just say my thing anyway. So we are opening citizens comments on Zoom. Before we start, I should say that this meeting is being recorded, and this meeting is also being live streamed on HW Cam on YouTube. As always, the Zoom link is open for public comment. As soon as public comments are completed, the Zoom link will be closed, and if you'd like to continue to watch the meeting, you can turn over to the HW Cam live stream. Any citizen who would like to speak before the committee should first identify themselves by name and address. And always I ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We genuinely appreciate citizens' comments both live are on the Zoom. And of course, we appreciate any input via other methods, via email. It's important that we hear what you have to say. At this point, do we have any citizens with their hands raised in the Zoom?
If you are in the Zoom and you would like to speak, please raise your hand. There's only one person.
Okay.
Not raising.
All right. It doesn't, so looks like there's no one on Zoom. Assuming there's no comments from the audience, though you're welcome to. Okay, thank you. All right. And that's the end of citizens' comments. Next on the agenda is the review of the committee protocols. I actually had anticipated a member who's not here to read, so would somebody be, would you be willing to read? This and this, so the parts in red. Thank you.
As elected members of the Hamilton-Wenham Regional School Committee, we, including the superintendent, accept the high honor and trust that has been placed in us to ensure that the students of the district receive the best education possible. To that end, we hereby commit to the following in the conduct of our business. Administration will endeavor to make materials for school committee meetings available the Friday before the meeting. The school committee will recognize that some circumstances will not always make this possible. In any event, we recognize that having background materials available for school committee members is a best practice. School committee members will vote according to their convictions, will avoid bias, and will uphold and support the decisions of the majority of the committee once a decision has been made. Positions will not be used for personal or partisan gain. All members will maintain the confidentiality of privileged information and will respect the open meeting law.
Thank you, Jen. Okay, next up is the consent agenda. Before we have a motion, does anyone have any items that they'd like to be held on the consent agenda? Okay, Jen. Oh, I'm sorry, Anna. Any items to be held? Okay. Jen, can I have a motion?
I move that we accept the consent agenda as written.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. All right, all those in favor? That is unanimous of the 6 members who are present. That includes you, Anna. I don't know, Anna, if you can see the whole room, but Michelle Bailey is not currently here. So we are 6. Okay, and the consent agenda passes. Thank you all. All right, moving right along to new business. I'm going to turn to Eric, and you can start us off with the superintendent goals.
Thank you very much. While he's still sitting here, I just want to let Craig know he's all set. It's all set. Thank you. Superintendent goals, as outlined in the memo that was distributed along with the goals, I wanted to take a first shot at developing goals related to the current district goals and the work that's being done as part of my continued communication plan and future plans to stay connected. I think it's important for us to be able to completely stay connected through. This is a little bit backwards where the principals and the school councils would have had the advantage of seeing my goals ahead of time if I was in at a normal time of the year. So I tried to keep that in mind as I developed this so that they wouldn't have to go back and make adjustments based on something that I put out there. The model is a standard model that is used by a number of superintendents. In fact, in talking with several in the area, they use a very similar models. And there is one thing that I do need to adjust on here that Dana actually caught. There's standard 2 is missing as one of the alignments, but it actually will fit right into several of these, so I just have to add it in with the correct indicators. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to take a look at the goals that I've set and kind of the first volley, if you will, and certainly
if this is the wrong direction. I am not wedded to this particular model. I just thought this would be a good opportunity to get out the information related to my goals, so that we could settle those, hopefully by the next meeting, and be able to continue our journey forward.
Okay. Do you want to, do you want to discuss each one, or do you want us to go through them with questions? How do you want to approach it?
I think from some of the conversations I've already had with some members, people have been through them
Great.
and given me some feedback that I've made some fine adjustments so far, and I'm certainly willing to take any feedback if you want to go that route.
Okay. So maybe let's just do it in a sort of, let's just start with goal 1, and if anyone has any clarifying questions about goal 1 that hasn't, and I actually really appreciate hearing that people are getting their questions answered during their scheduled conversations with the superintendent. That's a good use of everyone's time to make sure that everyone is taking the time to get those questions answered. Does anyone have any clarifying questions on goal 1?
This is, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, Jen.
This is just grammatical.
Yep.
Under benchmarks, number 2, it should get the third word, that at, just cross it off. It should be log demonstrating regular school visits.
All set. Thank you.
Anyone else with a clarifying question on goal 1? I have one.
Anna
Oh,
does one
Anna.
too.
Go ahead, Anna.
Thank you. And I want to go back. So I have a question about this, but I didn't quite hear what Eric said about number 2. Standard number 2, I do have a question about that, actually. I guess my only question on this is, it seems like the title of it is Maintain Momentum During Transition, which I like a lot, but it seems like what it's really about is like the evaluation of the staff and the school improvement plan. So I was just wondering if maybe you could define what you mean by momentum a little bit more, because some of it feels like, and maybe this is not what you mean, but it sort of just feels like you're saying we just need to keep doing what's required of us by law, like you have to do the educator evaluations, right? Like you don't really have a choice not to. And we have the formative assessment and then the school improvement plan. So I guess for me, it kind of feels like I like the idea of maintaining momentum, but I'm not quite sure that the things you've identified as action track to that. It feels more kind of just like you're going to keep doing what you have to do. I'm wondering if you could build that out a little bit more.
Sure. Can I jump on?
please
Thank
do.
you. Sure. Thank you, Anna. I really tried to think about the issues related to the transition happening in October versus starting back in July, and really trying to make connections throughout the district with not only the school improvement planning process, those kind of building level goals, but also working with each of the district level leaders to make sure that they are also in alignment with those goals. And I think the momentum piece is something I thought about a lot as I even interviewed for this position, as trying to continue without having any giant hiccups in the road or having any giant issues come our way. So I'm really trying to connect the dots, given the things that we have to do and the things that we want to do, and bringing those together. I can certainly build this out a little bit more if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think it does. I guess I want to know how you define momentum. Like what. That's all. Can we go back a step, because you said something about standard 2 that someone else had said, and that was one of my comments, is that there actually aren't any evaluation criteria at all focused on standard 2. That seemed to be something missing to me entirely.
Correct. That's what I led with when I did the introduction. The standard 2 in indicators I didn't add in, and I don't know why. That is my own fault, but I will go back and put those in there. There are certainly in all 5 of these goals ways to connect those dots as well. So I noticed it at the last minute after actually Dana and I were talking about it. So.
Okay, I didn't quite hear you. So thank you for that. Because so would you add it in as a whole new goal, or would you add it to one of the existing goals?
I would add it to one or more of the existing goals.
Okay.
Anna, do you have anything else on goal 1?
You know what it says. Is it trying to connect?
Okay. Michelle Horgan, do you have a question?
Yeah, just a quick one. I'll wait for Eric to
Go ahead, sorry.
tech the AV guy. So can I just elaborate more on the maintain momentum? Are you also talking about pre-pandemic? Because you have historical knowledge and you are on the building leadership team,
Yep.
I see that as the work that was being done in 2018, 19, and now we had the pause and during COVID, and now that maintaining momentum is part of that. Is that part of? Is that what you're saying here too?
It's part of the process. I think if you go backwards a year and start to look from where we were to where we want to be, and you know, I'll take you back to that interview process when we talked about making that shift and keeping the forward momentum focused on the goals that we had set as a district. And I think Mary Beth had done that, kind of put the pieces in place. But I think there was a little bit of a fear, including me coming in October, that these things would kind of fall away a little bit before we got them up and running. And I think we've been able to establish a momentum that should continue to move forward and climb steadily through the school year.
Okay, great, thank you.
Eric, I just had a quick question. Under the key actions, the final one there says supporting the implementation of school level improvement plans. So I guess this is not really, I don't know that anything needs to be changed in the written document. I'm just curious about what that looks like, supporting.
So when the schools create their goals, they don't necessarily have resources to be able to go out and say, okay, I did set this goal and these are our plans, but now we need help with professional development, or now we need help with acquisition of something to help them to meet that goal. And I think that's really part of my position, is to support that and find them the things that they need and help them to identify the things that they need along the way. And it could be just one building related thing, or as we're learning, you know, just looking at elementary, connecting those elementaries so that they're doing the same things is asking for resourcing. And part of that process is, how do I help them to resource so they're not stuck wondering where they can go to get PD, or where they can go to get a set of books to work with their teachers, or where they can go to get assessments for their kids. So it's more of a resourcing thing than anything.
Thank you, that was helpful.
Did we lose Anna?
Is Anna still there?
She drop off?
I could hear her before, even when we couldn't see her anymore.
Nope, she's still there.
There she is.
She's back.
Can we hear?
Is that a screensaver?
Anna, can you say something so we can know you can hear you? Oh, yeah, looks muted.
Anna, are you muted? Can you say something, Anna? Sorry.
Yep, this is Anna.
There you go.
live
Oh, there
from
you are.
Massachusetts.
You're back. You're back. Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that I know for myself, which this was, you know, when I was doing this last year, it was new. I know, Jen, this is new for you. So I want to make sure that everyone, as part of your review, is looking at the, you know, the standards, as Eric just mentioned, that we need to make sure that the standard number 2 gets in there, but also when you're looking at each one of these goals, that you've looked at the standard and the indicator and you feel like it's a good match. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Goal number 2, does anyone have any questions? Anna?
I just have a comment.
Oh,
does
okay.
Anna have, sorry, Anna
All
has
right,
a question.
Anna, you go first, then we'll have Julia.
Sorry, what'd you say, Dana? David's cough it's loud in the ear.
No, Anna, you go first. Goal 2.
Oh, my only question on this was, I really like this goal, Eric. I think this is perhaps one of the most important ones here, and I like all I like all of the benchmarks. My only question about that is there any notion about the website itself being more of a tool, or is that more of a district tool? And then as much as I love the use of social media, and I think that's a great tool, it doesn't reach everybody. So I was wondering if you would, you've got the email to I guess I'm thinking about the community at large that wouldn't receive a superintendent email because they're not in district and may not be on social media. I feel like we're potentially missing an important constituent group if we narrow it. So I was wondering about maybe adding a benchmark that wasn't social media or an email, but something more analog or something maybe, meeting members of the community that aren't going to be reached on those channels.
I can certainly look towards it. The website, as you may know, is due to be revamped. So we're careful with what we put on that right now because there's currently a 4-month process to redesign and rebuild and actually deploy the resources on the website so that they're useful. I could also check with the towns to see if there's a way to piggyback something that they do at their level to be able to say, hey, here's the newsletter or the weekly update, for example, that comes out on Friday. I also post that on a weblog that anybody can jump on and get, and you can also subscribe to that so every time I post something on there. So maybe I can work with the communities to see what they have. They tend to be a little bit more limited, but there may be opportunities to take advantage of it.
Julia?
Oh, yeah, no, I had a very similar comment. My comment was that I think this is a fantastic goal. I've already seen evidence of this increased communication and just availability in the school, and I've already heard some fantastic feedback from the community. So really my feedback was I really like this goal. I would also echo that the website should be a goal. I'm not sure if it's a district goal, or maybe a benchmark could be oversee the website revamp or something. Maybe that could be a benchmark. So it's not necessarily like we know we will have a new website in 12 months because that's obviously not very realistic, but something around spearhead the website overhaul, something like that.
Sure. Perfect. Just add it right in. Alan Topia gets to spearhead it, but I get to go back and forth about how it actually happens. So
Yeah, I don't know what the adjective is. I mean, the adverb is going to be, but
I will figure one out.
Well, if I'm, Julia, I'm just going to try to pair. It sounds to me like when you're looking towards evaluation, it sounds like one of the things you would be looking at is how the website has evolved and improved. And so you're looking for a way to sort of make that be reflected in that. Is that, am I reading you correctly?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is, I don't know exactly. I have a quick question or it's not a question, I guess. My question is that, I think everyone really liked this goal. I think it's really, my question was a lot of the benchmarks are very clearly how to quantify, right? That you actually did these things. And I guess maybe I didn't know whether you thought about or whether there could be a benchmark that would be more reflective of effectiveness. Like, is it, because having, in other words, we all know, like, having social media posts we can quantify that, but whether there is a way to quantify whether it's successful or effective. I don't have a concrete answer to that.
I think I thought about this last weekend when I was working through this document, and I think it might be something that I could add either a benchmark or an action that is related to, I'm going to do surveys about me through the year that would give us some of that feedback that would say, oh yeah, people enjoy this but don't like this, or maybe that's a way to incorporate that in there so you can get the effectiveness as well.
Yeah, and also just a useful learning tool. If you discover, that Twitter is really connecting with people and Instagram is not, well then that's just a practical matter that you're learning. Okay. Anybody else? Anything on goal 2? Okay, moving on. Goal 3. Questions? Anna?
So, my comment about goal 3 and goal 4 and goal 5 to some degree, and I think Superintendent Tracy, you'll appreciate this. These seem way too easy for you. These seem like gimmies, to be honest, and maybe that's okay, but I kind of feel like they don't quite feel like goals. I just sort of feel like, well, like, I guess my response to them is sort of saying like, well, yeah, of course you're going to have to do that because the process is happening. It feels a little like you're ticking a box, but I don't know that it's, honestly, they just don't seem very hard. And I guess I kind of feel like maybe my mindset about the goals, the first 2 goals are very clearly you as an individual leader of the district have a role to play that is unique to you. And if you don't do well in those, there will be, some sort of observable change. I kind of feel like the strategic planning process is it's happening. Like, we're doing it, there's other people, of course you'll be involved. The new superintendent program also just kind of feels like a participation goal. Like, of course you're going to do it. So I'm not quite sure how to frame that. Like, part of me feels like you set the bar too low for yourself, and I think you could do another goal that's a little bit more, I don't know, philosophical or far-reaching, or this is back to sort of some of the different standards that are there. Like, not only is standard 2 missing, but there's only 1 from standard 1, and then standard 3 and 4 are well represented, but they're repetitive. Like, there's not a lot of breadth of evaluation, and I guess I'd love to see you write something and think about another way that you could really bring your personal force of leadership, which is strong, to the district, as opposed to just sort of ticking a box to be like, yep, I'm going to do the new superintendent program. To me, that kind of feels like me saying, my goal is to take the MASC training. And like, once you click the box, you're like, okay, look, I did my goal. It just feels too easy. And I would love to see, something really maybe focused about operations or management or budget or working with the town, like, I don't know. So I guess these, I'd almost like to see them strike because I feel like they're too easy for you. And I mean that from a place of respect and affection. I think that you've set your bar too low, and I think I would like to see those go away. Goal 5, I feel like, is also kind of there. Like, that's a little bit more involved. But again, we've set up this MTSS system. It's going. You're running it. We're working on it as a district. So again, all 3 of these last ones feel a little bit like a box ticking exercise that I don't know I don't think they'll adequately demonstrate what you as the individual superintendent are doing in a leadership capacity for the district. I don't know if that comment makes any sense or not, but that's my response to those 3 goals.
Makes absolute sense.
I'm going to just jump in quickly before I let Eric. I just want to technically we're on goal 3 right now, but Anna, you mentioned 3, 4, and 5. I did want to just respond, Anna, and to tell the committee regarding goal number 4, which is that professional practice goal. I actually had some conversations last year and also this year with Dorothy, because we had a very similar goal from Mary Beth. This is, and Eric, you can speak to this, but I think on this one, it sort of needs to be here, and it is kind of
I'm pretty sure it was on Julie's and Mary Beth's.
Yeah. It's so that doesn't speak to, and I know Anna, and I know Eric wants to respond regarding the other goals 3 and 5, but I just want to say regarding goal 4, I really think that this is kind of a standard. You can speak to that because you're in the program, but it is sort of a goal that does need to be here, and it is sort of just fulfilling the kind of the program.
It is, and I agree with Anna in the case of it's kind of a checkbox, yes,
Right.
but it's one of the things that MASS really requires us to put on there to keep us accountable, to make sure we're going to our, every other meetings, to make sure we're attending the classes, to make sure we're doing all the things necessary to be involved in the NISIP program. So they ask us to put that on there, which is absolutely a slam dunk when you say, okay, I got to attend the sessions, I got to do this, I have to do that. The work involved is somewhat related to the work we're doing this year, especially the strategic plan. And I think out of the 3 goals, the heavy lift is going to be the strategic planning part, because we don't have a good plan for that right now, and I think that's an important thing to note at this point in time. And part of that will be more in my lap to be able to run that process. I don't think we're gonna be able to put that out to a consultant to do, because frankly, we haven't budgeted for it. So the reality of that will be, that'll be the heavy lift out of all of it. The MTSS piece will be the second heavy lift, realistically, because it relies heavily on data. We don't have consistent, solid data structures at the middle and high school. Not to say they aren't there, we just haven't assembled them or even determined what makes sense as we build these support systems for kids. It's, you know, one of the things I've tried to stay heavily involved in at the elementary level with the MTSS is really gaining an understanding of how they're integrating their assessments with the actual outcomes, and then the conversations, like a day like yesterday, when teachers are working to identify individual weaknesses at the kid level, at the singular kid level. That detail needs to now transfer up where it's never been. Not as easily done because of the structures of the facilities and the structures of the teams. So those two will be the heaviest lifts this year. But certainly I understand, Anna, your position, and I would say let me go back to the drawing board a little bit and think through the leadership piece and see what I can add or at least maybe grow from that, from what's here.
Michelle Horgan, you look
I'll
like you
let
had a
Julia
question.
go. She's
Okay.
Jen had her
patient
hand
with
up
me.
though, before me.
Jen?
I think budget issues fall really nicely under communications, which I know we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
Adding it to that, so I think that will expand that goal in particular. And I'm actually okay with some of these goals being check boxes. I mean, anybody who has a job is gonna have some things that you have to check off every year and they have to get done. I really think these goals are much more challenging than we saw last year. And I wasn't here with Julie, but like these definitely go a step above anything we were asking Mary Beth to do, particularly in terms of the communication. I mean, that in and of itself is almost a full-time job.
Yeah.
David?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, you know, having been through these a lot you know, within my own professional environment, but also just from a school committee standard, even the check boxes, you know, the easier ones do require a lot of work. And, you know, these are incorporated, but also on top of just the day-to-day operations of stuff. So, you know, the goal 3, you know, since we're on here, is a pretty large ask. And yes, it is something that we, you know, would expect them to do normally, but at the same time, I think we want to also support that, you know, making it a goal, making it something that you're focused on is important to us because it's important to the district and that we want you to spend your quality time there. And, you know, again, if we're doing our reviews in a few months and everything comes out exceptional, maybe next year then we say, okay, you know what, we could up that, you know, push that bar up a little. But, you know, I do see a lot of work here involved, and sure, every once in a while you need that little gimme to go. So, but I do think you have a decent amount of work here ahead of yourself, and you see the challenge
And we're
ahead of you.
asking him to do it in 9 months,
Right.
not a year.
Julia?
Yes. I think, well, I can't speak for Anna, but I feel like I understand what she's saying because I feel like she and I gave similar feedback to Mary Beth with the goals, whereas goal 1 is a goal, you know, maintain momentum during transition, you know, keep the district moving forward. And goal 2, improve communication and build relationships. So I think what I'm hearing is that goal 3, 4, and 5 are part of a bigger goal. They're more benchmarks. Like the strategic planning process, that's a goal to improve the district or something like that. That's what I heard Anna say. I can't speak for her, but I feel kind of the same way. So I think it's a little bit for me semantics. Like, I see participate in the new, I don't have a problem with a single one of these goals, by the way, but I just think maybe participate in the new superintendent induction program, that's a bigger overall goal of improve leadership skills or something.
Yep.
Do you see what I'm
Yep.
saying? So I'm not saying I'm not necessarily saying to rewrite them, but I do think that goals 3, 4, and 5 are more benchmarks than maybe goals. But I don't know. I can't really offer any other specific feedback than that. But I don't have a problem with the way any of them are written, but I do see them as part of bigger, loftier goals.
Dana, may I say something to that?
Hang on one second. I'm going to let Michelle Horgan talk. Michelle?
Yep. I see these goals as foundational goals for us. And we haven't had that for a while. And I think we need this to be able to build upon that. Because if we build Widow's Walk on a house of cards, it's not going to last. But if we have this in place and we build upon that, then next year it becomes, the bar is raised. And the bar is raised. So for me, these are foundational. So thank you.
Anna, do you have one more thing?
I do. It's I want to affirm what Julia said and maybe offer maybe a better way to phrase what I'm saying, because I think it's helpful. And maybe this is, I think this is just based on early evidence of having worked with you a little bit, Eric, but I feel like the higher level goal that might be be a better umbrella for do the strategic planning, the new superintendent program, the MTSS program is, because again, I think of the goals as more philosophical. Something like, establish yourself as an innovative, creative leader within the superintendents of the North Shore, or something like that. And then you could have these benchmarks that say, I'm going to participate in this program, I'm going to go to this training, I'm going to look for innovative funding opportunities, something like that. Because I've been thinking a lot about what is the role of the superintendent, and you're one of the few identifiable community leaders. And I feel like something that talks about you bringing that force of leadership and personality into the community at large, but also within sort of the field. I don't want to, maybe those shoes don't fit. Maybe you don't want to be seen as an innovative, inspirational leader for the community. Maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but to me, that's what all these sort of smaller pieces would build up to, is how are you establishing yourself as a competent professional leader who has done all of the box ticking. I hear what you're saying, everyone has to tick a box. I just feel like I want you to push yourself to do more, because I actually think you're capable of doing more. I really do. That's my pep talk from Worcester, Massachusetts.
I do have some comments, Eric, if you want to respond, or if you want me to just.
I'll listen first.
Okay. So it's interesting, because the feedback I want to give, I guess, more to the committee is that I think I fully understand that the structure that sort of Julia and Anna are discussing, but I guess my one and only experience doing the evaluation process, as I look at this, I think the structure that is provided here is a more useful structure to completing the evaluation process than what I fully understand, the idea that Anna's sort of describing about having sort of a higher level goal. I just, as a matter of practicality, I look at this and I'm thinking about my job in terms of doing an appropriate evaluation, and I think I see this as these goals being divided up the way that you have them would allow me to make, I think, useful evaluative comments as we move along, as I think about the formative assessment as we move along. So that's my 2 cents on that. But I do understand the comments of the committee. Eric, I'm going to let you comment.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the feedback, and certainly that's what my expectation was coming in here, that there'd be some feedback related. And, given the realities of our district, we are in an unusual spot. I agree with, okay, what's that leadership piece look like in real life, unattached, if you will, to, say, district goals, just kind of being out there and being the face, as Anna said. It's one of the things that I think you will see through this process, that's, me being out there and being involved and being a part of the communities is really the kind of the backbone of all of this structure that will make, some of these other things come to life more clearly as we go through the process. I think the strategic planning process, the MTSS process are not one and done. These are multi-year goals that will continue and grow as we determine, the direction of the district. So we have this conversation at the halfway mark about my goals. Then it allows me to start to turn the ship based on your feedback, say, okay, we need to turn in this direction as we establish this long-term strategic planning process. That's an intricate process that involves, again, a lot of people and a lot of feedback and really trying to hone in on what we as a group want to do in light of, what we can do with budgets or with resourcing and people over time. Strategically, either a 3 or a 5 year plan, and those are all conversations I think we still need to have. So I think this, for me, was just foundational, coming in October 1st versus coming in July 1st. I think it might have been maybe structured differently, but I do agree with the feedback. I think, there is a strong need for a leadership presence in this district, and I get that, I understand that, and that's part of, let me go back and think that through a little bit and see how it relates, and maybe in reformulating some of these in direct relation to the rubric itself instead of to our specific district goals. Maybe that's a different way to do it. So I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you for your work on that, Eric. And we look forward to seeing them again. Okay, so we have, next up on the new business, we have, as we had agreed, we talked briefly, we had a discussion regarding the regional agreement, and we decided to put it on here. I guess I'll open up by saying, we're in a few minutes, we're going to get a recommendation and potentially vote on the school attorney. I mean, the district attorney. And I guess I'm open for anyone who has more questions or more information that you want, but I guess I'd like to put out there that after conversations with Eric and really sort of thinking about it, it seems to me that we might really want to wait to make any decisions until we can meet with our new attorney. But that's, I'm open for discussion. David?
Really what I wanted to say is, as we operate as a district, right now, as we're coming out of, and it's still really in a, sort of this area of transition, one of the only things we really have to fall back on is this backbone of our current MOA, right? Our current district agreement. So it doesn't make that much sense to sort of take the one foundation document we have that is currently not in flux and throw that in flux amongst everything else that's going on. We understand what's going on, within the district, within the two towns, sort of what everybody's thinking. But it's just such a tough time to it's our pivot foot in basketball, right? We can move one way or another based off of this solid document, and to sort of go in. There's definitely things that we do want to discuss, and for the newer members to the to the board, it's a complex document, and there's some things in there that, as you read through or as you get to sort of realize is a limitation for us as a district. We do want to go back and discuss at some point, but where at the same time, 4 of our members are on the, newer side, that maybe, a little bit further down the line, as we understand more of the nuances within the agreement itself, that it would make more sense. Once we're working with an attorney for a while, once we have our superintendent in place for a while, and we're not sort of dealing with all these COVID issues, right? The aftermath of COVID, then it makes a lot more sense to say, okay, because it's going to be a long, complex discussion, and and really, something that it could change a lot of things, and to sort of try and discuss that now just doesn't make the most sense. That's my view from sitting here for 5 years.
Thank you. And I will say, because I have asked some questions. It's, Hamilton's the one that sent the letter. So I do think actually, I'm going to have another conversation, with Bill Olson. I do think it's okay for us to get more information from them about what they're looking at, and to get clarity, just to ask questions. But at this time, like I said, I agree with what David said. There's a lot going on, and I would be interested in what this future attorney advises us. One thing I would like to put out there is it might be an opportunity once we get that person in place to have that person attend a meeting and give us some thoughts on the regional agreement. So that's just a thought, but thank you for that, David. I appreciate it. Other people? Anna?
Thank you, Dana. I mean, I sort of agree with David for sure, and I do think it's wise to wait for new council to come on board. It feels like it would be unwise for us to formally open a conversation without having our council up to speed. That said, I guess I want to understand, as you framed it, getting more information. I still stand by what I said before, which is I think that we, as a courtesy to the town of Hamilton, even though Wenham's letter had indicated that they didn't see it as a priority, I think when any one of our town boards says, we'd really like to talk to you about X issue, I think it's good form for us to say, okay, let's try to understand what that means. However, I do agree with you that I would wait to open a formal negotiation of it until council is in place. But I think I still feel like I'd want to understand what they're asking. The other thing that's a little bit up in the air, and legally I don't know what it means at all for us, but right now the state has been considering redistricting on a legislative level. And at present, if the present plan were to hold, I think Wenham is split into 2 different legislative districts, and Hamilton is in yet another. I do not know what effect that might have on funding or allocations or sourcing, but I'm a little bit concerned about opening up something legal when there are these sort of state level forces. And maybe it means nothing, but it's just something I'm thinking about, and I don't know what that means if you have multiple representatives across a regional school district. It's then represented, instead of having one rep, Brad Hill was always our one representative, we potentially would have 3 representatives if that redistricting held, which is just something else that's kind of percolating. And then I also do agree that the district has a lot going on and a lot of really big goals, as do the towns. The towns are both doing master planning. There's a lot of big thinking happening. So I do agree. It's sort of like, there's an old piece of advice that you shouldn't have a child and get a new job all at the same time. Like, there's just too much big stuff happening. This is really big, and I think if we're going to do it, I want to really understand why we're starting to do it, and also what our potential end game might look like. And right now, I don't know that I feel comfortable making any sort of right decisions, but I do feel like we have to have some sort of courtesy response to the town of Hamilton, especially to understand what they're, to show respect that they've asked for a conversation. And I think we need to honor that somehow.
Thank you, Anna. Yeah, and I would say it's not just a courtesy. It's genuine. We really do. We are all in one community, and I genuinely do want to understand fully what it is they're saying, and so thank you. All right. Anybody else? Okay. All right. Next up, I'm going to turn it over to you, Eric, for the problem-solving guide.
Thank you very much. This is a product that has been vetted by the leadership team, more for accuracy than anything, and borrowed with permissions from several districts around here in response to conversations that occurred at meetings, school committee meetings here, related to what do I do if a parent reaches out to me, or this happens, or that happens. I really tried to design this not only for people here on the committee as a kind of a reference guide to say, oh, if a parent reaches out or comes up to me at a soccer game and says, this happened, there's a kind of a quick guide to say, oh, then here's what you do, so that we're all on the same page. And I think the idea will be to, you know, as I talked about with one member yesterday, kind of marketing this over and over through the school year, so that, you know, it's going to be front and center on the website, on each school website. So it's not like, well, you know, where do I find this document? It's right there on the front of every single front page of websites, and then disseminating it again widely and continuously, probably every 60 or 90 days, to say, hey, by the way, and that could go out in an update every once in a while. It could be attached to every update as a link. So there's a lot of opportunities to really get this out there and drive it out there. And I do intend to make one change on the suggestion of a member today, that what if all else fails? That's one of the things that, you know, what if some parent goes through the whole process of the elementary level and it doesn't work? And what we're going to do to resolve that is add a paragraph at the end to say, if all else fails and you don't kind of get satisfactory responses, here's what you're going to do. You're going to reach out to me, and then it's in my lap to be able to deal with. But I think this gives people a process, and people can understand it, and it keeps you kind of from saying, I don't know, like I'll email the superintendent and find out. Now we can just say, here's where you go and here's what you can do. And then we'll publish it and help people to understand it, and ask principals to publish it in their communications as well.
Thank you. People have questions? Jen?
I came up with one after we got off the phone. For elementary level, step 2, what is the difference between the adjustment counselor and the school counselor?
So it's really the adjustment counselor and school counselor. So school counselors are specifically doing that, you know, kind of day-to-day classroom counseling. They're more of, how would I describe it, more of a curriculum-based. They're working on skill sets with kids at that level. So try to connect it with things that they do, like when they're in a particular setting, or how they act, how they react, I guess is how we looked at it. When they're at lunch versus when they're in, you know, a classroom and there's a behavioral issue, they're really two different responses, and it's going to depend on the school. Some schools have 2 counselors, and others have 1. So it's really going to be school dependent as well.
Yeah, I just didn't know if there was a difference.
Yeah, mostly situational, and given that the school counselors are really structured around a curriculum at any level. So if you go to the guidance at the high school level, for instance, where I would be able to speak more clearly about it, they have a particular curriculum that they follow. So we try to connect the dots there to things that they would talk about in those instances, whereas the adjustment counselor would be more trying to help kids through these, navigate, if you will.
Anna?
Thanks, Dana. I had the same question as Jen, but I guess I'm still a little bit confused. So, for example, my kid is a Cutler. I'm not familiar with that. So you're saying some elementary schools have 2 counselors and some only have 1?
Correct. The Winthrop has 2 counselors.
Okay. Okay, that's helpful. That's good. I didn't know that. One question, I have 2 questions. So something that's not really addressed is, and maybe it's understood, but what if the concern is about the person that you're supposed to go to? You know, what if a student is having a problem with the teacher about something in the classroom and doesn't feel comfortable talking to the teacher, or doesn't feel comfortable talking to the assistant principal about something? Is it understood that they could elevate it to the next level, or could they go to a different person if they're more comfortable with that person because they have a relationship with them? That's one question. And then the other section, I wonder if we need to add, and this sort of gets to something that I've been talking about as an agenda item, but what if it's a community-based concern about something bigger in the district? Like, you know, something about the superintendent's office, something about the bus. I guess the bus routes could be a bus concern. But as a committee member, I feel like sometimes I get concerns and I still don't quite know where I would put them because it's solely based on grade level issues and very student focused. What would be a similar path if it was community focused? And how would you want us to advise people to elevate it?
Sure, I think the reality of what's occurring is important to understand. And if you, I'm going to use Georgetown as an example. Their recent events that they've had there would certainly not go to anywhere but the superintendent's office to sort out. So and that's what I would say if somebody reached out to me, I would take that and certainly put the right staff in the right places to navigate that along with myself. So I think the bigger community issues that come to any school committee member, our lines of communications are wide open. You can call me on Sunday at midnight if you want to, but those are, I think, pieces that I understand as my role as superintendent, and I think all of us can agree to as kind of the leading the charge, if you will, but this is more of trying to manage all those school level issues. There are other things that will spill in, police issues that, you know, may involve a staff member, for example, that, like Anna's saying, that certainly would come to me to be able to sort it out. So there's still kind of that quarterbacking piece, if you will, by the superintendent on these larger scale issues. We're a small district, 1,700 kids, so it's not, you know, it's not far to go to get answers and to connect people together. So I think this was generally just for here are kind of the things that happen most often in our school district, and the bigger issues tend to get elevated. I mean, immediately, you know, the second night I was officially appointed, I got a call at 9 o'clock at night from the police. They called me directly, so that's just a relationship we have with people in the community as well. And I think that's important to note, that most of the, you know, the kind of police, fire, and the community-based people, the town managers, know they can reach out to me at any time. They all have my direct connection. So, and it's the same, I think, with school committee. I wouldn't want you to sit and ponder through this chart and say, well, it doesn't fit anywhere, so I don't know what to do. That would come directly to me. And ultimately, it's my responsibility. If something doesn't get sorted out, it's going to end up in my lap, and I think that's, you know, the kind of the piece that I'll add at the end. If your concern doesn't, you know, get alleviated, or doesn't, you're not satisfied, then, you know, ultimately it'll come to me in the long run, and somebody may jump through all these hoops to get there, and that's an important piece of the puzzle as well, if you start to look at problem solving within our school community and then within the greater towns.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, Eric, that for me, I think this is a really important document that is, I read it as empowering for parents, which is what I think, and for students. I think I particularly liked the high school. I know it said it in the high school, and I believe in the middle school, it encouraged that the student ought to, you know, be the one, if, you know, obviously given, depending on the circumstance, but to be the one to take the first advocacy step. And I see this, I like having this document out, available to parents. It sets up an empowerment kind of, that you as the parent can, you have resources, you have ways, there's a process, and that having a document like this sets up an expectation that your voice is going to be heard and your problem's going to be addressed. And I think it's, I think this is actually a very important step in doing that, in addressing it. It feels empowering to know that, oh, there's a process I can follow, and here it is. So thank you for that.
Can I add one thing?
Please.
So I didn't mention, there's kind of an education piece to this. So there's an expectation that at each school level, principals will also kind of say to parents here, like if they have, curriculum night would have been a great night to showcase something like this. We have everybody there. Here's a process. Here's how it works. And at least that education piece can happen. So we'll continue to find ways to continue to educate people, including kids. Like, kids should see this. Students should see this document. I don't think it's an adult-only document, because there are kids even at the high school level that say, I'm not sure what to do. Or an example that Dr. Carr and I were talking about, what if, it's a male-female issue? What do they do in response? So that's a piece we'll have to address at kind of that end paragraph, if you will. But there are some things that you'll cover all the bases with, and others that get a little more tricky.
I just want to add too, communication isn't one way. It's
Right.
not Eric communicating to us. It's like you're saying, Dana and Eric. It's parents communicating and knowing what channels and how to advocate for their child and themselves and their families.
Okay, thank you. All right, next, I'm not sure, was it, well, Eric and Anna have been doing a lot of work. And I'm going to turn this next agenda item over to them to talk about a recommendation on a potential school committee council.
Anna, do you want to take this one?
Sure.
Okay.
So the memo that has been presented to you is sort of a really good summary of our process, but I'll go over sort of a verbal highlight. Eric and I both reached out to our respective professional organizations, superintendents and school committee members, to just do a little fishing to see if names came up. And I think fortunately there were a few common names that kept coming up over and over. So we developed a short list of initially 4 firms that we wanted to hear more from. So that was the first sort of happy coincidence, is we didn't have 20 recommendations. We could narrow it pretty quickly to 4 firms that kept getting recommended for different reasons. And I can speak to what I heard from school committees members. I put it out on the listserv and got a lot of really nice responses back from other committees across the Commonwealth with very specific recommendations, and also rationale for why they like someone not. So we made a short list. Unfortunately, one of the firms that we wanted to interview is so good and so busy, they're not taking new clients. We didn't actually have a chance to speak with them. But the other 3 we arranged interviews with, and we conducted interviews with all 3 of the firms last Friday. And based on those interviews, we got to the end of the process, and I said to Eric, okay, coach, who do you have? Who do you like best? And he and I were universally in agreement that the firm we felt like was the best representative for us moving forward was Myra O'Connell, the main staff attorney that they would liaison with us is an attorney named Mark Terry. And we both had a really good feeling about him, a good rapport, very knowledgeable, very, very seasoned, and a lot of experience. So it was fortunate that we both sort of agreed and kind of agreed for the same reasons, both experience, feeling. I personally really liked him because he is also a school committee member and has been a school committee member in Amherst, I think it is. No, Ashland. And he's living through the same COVID nightmare that we all have been, which was actually really reassuring from a perspective taking. So that is our recommendation. There were some other sort of demographic criteria about the firms that we picked up. Just numerically, we had a small, a medium, and a large firm. Myra O'Connell is the largest firm that we interviewed. They're also the oldest firm that we interviewed, which was interesting. They've been around for a very long time and have been doing well for a long time. So that is our recommendation to you, and we feel good about our process and the criteria. And with your support, we would advocate moving forward with them.
Okay. Thank you, Anna, and thank you so much, both of you, for all the work that you've done on this. I know that it was a lot of time. Yes. I appreciate it. What do people have for questions? Michelle?
I had asked yesterday, how does this compare to our past fees?
So the most recent invoice that we paid, we've been paying $200 an hour. And this is, oddly, that this group was lowest out of the three, I believe, or at least they were all in the same ballpark within $5 or so. This Merrick O'Connell group is $235 an hour. They stress to us, their individual billing outside of schools is over $400 an hour. And for schools, they restructure in order to, help. They get the idea of the budget constraints within schools. So I think that was a fortunate thing. But they were all right around the same, 230, 235, 240, 250, with various other things thrown in there. Merrick O'Connell will do some free workshops for us at the school committee level, whereas the others would not have. They would have charged us for them. So there's also a wider spectrum of expertise.
Thank you.
If I can just add to that too, Michelle, your question about billing. The rates are all very comparable, and they also bill in 6-minute increments. So they're always being charged for 10, excuse me, as opposed to being charged by the quarter hour. We're only being charged by the 10th of an hour, which that rate would make a difference. So it's a little bit more favorable. And as Eric said, they, because of the breadth of their firm, they've really covered everything. I think they have 61 attorneys, which is, it's a good sized firm. So that gave us some comfort that if for some reason there was a question that came up and the interview questions that we crafted, we talked about regional agreements. We talked about working with relatively inexperienced school committee members. I freely admitted that our committee is young and a little bit green, with a couple exceptions. We talked about construction projects and what that might mean for us, and did they have expertise in management? So, we sort of asked a lot of different questions about a breadth of things that we as a committee and as a district might encounter in the next few years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay.
I just have a comment. Thank you for taking this on. We've been blessed with Naomi for so long in this district that it was a daunting task, and I really appreciate you putting so much time and effort into it. And Eric, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Yes, thank you.
I agree. Thank you. And I will, we'll take a vote, I guess, and then I will mention we do want to appreciate Naomi and make sure we communicate appropriately with Naomi. Okay, Jen, are you willing to make a motion?
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee accepts the recommendation of Merrick O'Connell, attorneys at law, as the school committee attorney, pending the successful execution of any necessary contracts.
Second.
Seconded by Michelle Horgan. Sorry, she beat you, Anna. Okay, do we have any further discussion? Okay. Anna.
There's just one other thing I want to say before I forget it. And I just want to compliment Superintendent Tracy and also Janelle in the central office. In working with this on them, they were so organized and timely and helpful and accommodating, organizing multiple Zoom calls, multiple documents, receiving documents. I just want to, none of that would ever come to public light had I not taken a moment to say it right now. It was all very behind the scenes work. But I think it's really important to recognize when our staff executes at a high professional level, and both Eric and Janelle were super rock stars to deal with, especially given my travel schedule, work schedule, all of my insanity. So I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you to both of them and compliment their professionalism, because it made my life really easy in trying to get through this process and coordinate all this work in the middle of a busy work day. So thank you, Eric, and thank you to Janelle too, who also put a lot of time in. I just wanted to get that in there.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, are we ready for a vote? Okay, all those in favor? And that is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Eric, you and I, or you and Anna can talk about what we actually need to do in order to go about making that next process happen, if there is anything. I will I'm just speaking out loud. I will definitely contact Naomi unless somebody else wants to be the contact person, but I'll contact Naomi. She has been doing such a great job just hanging on with us. And in her retirement, she's been with us months longer than she had intended. We're very appreciative. So I'll be in touch with her.
Okay, and I'll reach out to the other, I wanted to wait till tonight to reach out. I'll reach out to everybody else tomorrow morning, just let them know
Okay.
which direction we're.
Great. All right. And I will, just on the off chance that she's, that she's watching, I'll contact Naomi tomorrow, but knowing that she'll understand that we'll have a process in place still, but she knows, so. Okay. All right, Vinny, I think you're up.
Get off this.
Don't trip.
Do we need to turn Anna around, or is she going to be able to see it on her?
That's okay. As long as it's just the handout from the exhibit.
Okay.
Vinny, I printed it and have it, so you're good.
Okay.
No, there's people there.
Okay, tonight I am here to present to you the FY22 year-end forecast as of the first quarter ending September 30th, 2021. So some budget realities that I faced while conducting this forecast is the fact that only 25% of the fiscal year has passed. And when you look at it as the number of school days, there's only been 20 of 180 school days that have passed, or roughly 11% of the school year. While going through the budget, one thing to point out is that our 22 budget only incorporated a 1% COLA, while most of our staff received a 2%. Next, the budget did not incorporate the $500 COVID supplemental payment that most of our bargaining members that will be receiving. The budget currently is up 0.2 FTEs, and this represents the addition of the math teacher at the middle school. The biggest factor to consider is the FY21 prepaid tuitions that I'll go over in a second. And then lastly, one thing to mention is I did not perform a line-by-line analysis on this forecast, as it's the first forecast, and again, only 11% of the school year has passed. A lot is going to change, and a line-by-line analysis really isn't worth the effort that it puts in with all the things that are going to change throughout the year. So overall, we are predicting about a balance at year end of approximately $330,000. This is how it is dispersed over the DAC form. This is how you disperse it over each DESI category. So to go into prepaid tuitions for a moment, at the end of FY21, you guys authorized us to prepay tuitions. At the end of 21, we prepaid roughly $1.09 million in prepaid tuitions. So what this means is we used FY21 unspent funds in order to cover unbudgeted or unforeseen expenses in FY22. So what are those unbudgeted expenses? Right now, this is kind of just a running list of the major budget categories or major expenses that have come up since the passing of the 22 budget. I'm going to go over a couple of them briefly. If you have any questions on any of them, obviously you can stop me
Vinny, can I interrupt and ask, can I ask, I'm just actually asking HW Cam, can you turn Vinny's mic up just a little bit?
Talk closer, sorry.
Thank you.
So the next item is their strategic plan. As many of you know, we did add $20,000 in our strategic plan budget for 22. Now I feel like I step out, sorry. But majority of that money was spent on the portrait of a graduate. So if we want their strategic plan to move forward, and if we are going to contract it out, we needed about estimated $40,000 for this. The next item is about an additional $52,000 for contracted services relating to maintaining students in district. In order for us to not send them out of district, we had to contract out more services. This is costing us about an additional $52,000 from now to the year end. The last item on the list is tents. As some of you know, a lot of the tents were covered by the ESSER grant, but the ESSER grant wasn't approved until October. So from the beginning of school in the end of August to the beginning of October, we can't apply the cost of those tents to the grant, so the general fund has to pick that up. So in all, I'm estimating about an additional $660,000 in unbudgeted expenses. So add the two together from a big picture perspective. We prepaid about $1 million in tuitions at the end of last year, and we have about $660,000 in unbudgeted expenses. So this is where I'm coming up with our roughly $335,000 predicted fund balance at the end of the year. So that's kind of the overall budget presentation. The next few slides are around the transfers. Just to walk you through the first one. So when we originally built our 22 budget, we did not want to reveal our cards while we were negotiating. So the 1% COLA that we built into the budget, we placed it, instead of placing it on each individual line, therefore being able to see what we have budgeted for an increase, we put it all in our insurance account. So this first transfer takes that 1% out of the insurance stack and distributes it out amongst each of the 8 categories that covered all of the staff members. So this is the first transfer that moves out the original 1% that we put in. So then the second transfer is the additional 1% on top of the other 1% that we didn't budget for, that is coming directly out of the prepaid tuitions account that will again be dispersed out into the 8 different accounts. So as you can see just with these, well, let me do one more. So then transfer number 3 is the $500 COVID supplemental payment that I believe is roughly costing us $170,000, as I said before. This one again is distributed out into all of the DESI categories. So these 3 transfers are really the main reason I didn't do a line-by-line analysis. It's the main reason I didn't go through everyone's salary lines, because I need the amounts to actually be the correct amount, to therefore recalculate everyone's salary to give you a proper estimate of where we're going to be at the end of the year. When you have to factor in the original 1% that's not there, the additional 1%, this COVID payment, even my eyes start to get crossed when I go through it all. So then transfer number 4 is everything else that I covered on the previous slide. It's the additional YMCA, the lighting, the additional stipends, the math teacher, and so forth. So this 4th transfer takes care of every other item on the list. I think that's it. So yeah, that would be the motion if you choose to do so. Would you like me to stop? There's only one more slide. So what's next? The next is the second quarter forecast, which obviously ends on December 30th. I will probably present it either the end of late January or the beginning of February. But that forecast will include all the salary breakage. So what I mean by that is, in our 22 budget, we may have budgeted for a certain individual to be at master's, step 4, but we actually hired somebody at a bachelor's step 3. So whatever those savings are is what I refer to as a salary breakage. So once the second quarter rolls around, I will include that in the forecast. Again, one of the reasons was because of all the transfers, but a second reason is we have a lot of vacant positions right now. So hopefully by then they'll be filled and we can have a more accurate number. And the third reason I didn't do it is we had over 70 new employees So even if I went through every person, most likely there's gonna be about 40 of them that change between now and the next 3 weeks, which again, the time I would spend on it, not to say it would be worthless, but would have to be all done over. The second item is health insurance. So during the second quarter, I will go through and do an analysis on who took insurance and who did not during open enrollment. Again, this relates to the 70 employees. They had till the end of September to give it to us, so they're not going to be properly reflected on our health insurance bill until October. So we don't know exactly who they are as of September 30th. And then again, the second quarter will include a line analysis where we will meet with every department head and kind of go through their budget and their lines to properly reflect the forecast for the second one. So just to end it, it's just, we need to proceed with caution. This is really only the first quarter. A lot of things are going to change from then till now, even though we are predicting a roughly $300,000 balance. That really only represents 1% of our budget. That's really where you want to be at the end of the year. A healthy budget kind of ends with 1-2% left over. So it's really not something you can go and say, what can we go spend this $300,000 on? That's something you really would want to do come April after the third quarter, not after the first one. As I said, many things are going to change. So that kind of does it. I can go back to the motion slide if you'd like and take any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Before we do the motions, does anyone have any questions?
I actually do have one. It's about the technology lost or damaged during remote learning. I remember having to sign a waiver saying that if something was lost or missing, we would get billed.
Yes, so we did bill a lot of people, but some of the stuff was kind of just wear and tear that we didn't appropriately, charge them for. So a lot of the technology that we did disperse was already 4 or 5 years old. So by the time it got back to us, it wasn't so much that the student broke it, it was just that it's now past its useful life, but we didn't really have a handle on that technology until it all got back to us.
Okay.
So yes, we did bill out some people, but a lot of people who left during COVID also left without paying their bill. So.
Fair enough.
Anna?
So I have a few questions and a couple concerns. Some of this makes sense to me why it's unbudgeted, right? The COLA and the COVID payment are clearly in the category of things that we hedged and the contract came out different. So those I'm actually not bothered by. I'm not bothered by the out-of-district placement. You can't control that. A math teacher here, a stipend there, the salary in the guidance office, some of it makes sense to me that it's quote-unquote unbudgeted. And Vinny and Superintendent Tracy, this will sound critical to you, but it's not meant to be personal at all. But there are some of these things, I just don't understand why it's unbudgeted. And maybe that goes back to Mary Beth Banyos, or maybe it's on us, or I just don't know. But I don't understand why we would have not foreseen the lighting auditorium problem and built that into the budget. I don't understand why we would not have foreseen that the technology might need to be replaced. I really want an explanation as to why we didn't budget for the strategic plan when that is literally goal number 1 of this district. And I don't understand why we don't have that in the budget when that was literally the first goal, ends with the strategic plan. So I can accept that we have some unbudgeted things due to COVID. Same thing with the tents. I mean, we kind of foresaw that we would need tents. I don't understand why we're not using ESSER funds for that. I also am still really unclear as to why we didn't use all the ESSER funding for the YMCA camp. I remember when that was pitched to us, we were told it would be grant funded, it would be this great thing. And now you're saying it's going to cost us $34,000 in unbudgeted money. So I don't really have, I guess my other frustration is, I don't feel like we as a committee have any latitude to say no here. Like, we have to pay these expenses have come up. You're saying they're unbudgeted. But I'm looking at this and I guess I sort of want an explanation especially on the things that I guess I feel like we should have been able to budget for. I do not understand the strategic plan. I guess if it's not part of the budget, then why is it not part of the $40,700 that's under the superintendent contracted services line item? There's also this $25,000 non-exempt superintendent office budget. I remember raising those as questions. I don't remember what the non-exempt superintendent office budget is, but I would love someone to explain to me why goal number 1 of our district is quote unquote unbudgeted. How did that happen? And how do we fix that?
So I think I have answers for every one of those, but you hit me with so many at once.
I know, I have that
Try
effect
to
on people.
Tell
I know.
you what I heard. So the tents, I did mention this before. We did build it into the ESSER grant, but the ESSER grant was not improved until after the tents were installed. We cannot place the expenditures before the grant was approved onto the grant. Therefore, we have to cover it from the general fund. When we built the 22 budget, Mary Beth was under the assumption that COVID was going to be over and we were not going to use the tents. That's why they were not built into the budget. The next thing I believe you might have asked was about their strategic plan. We did build in $20,000 for the strategic plan. We also built in $20,000 for the portrait of the graduate, but the portrait of the graduate came in at roughly $36,000, which ate up all of the money for both the portrait of a graduate and their strategic plan. Those are about the only two I can remember. Do you have another one?
The auditorium lighting, if the motherboard, was that just not?
That was in June of 2021 that was presented to me. We got the budget approved in February of 2021, so we had no knowledge of the lighting issue at the time the budget was developed.
Okay.
I think the other
It
one
just
Anna
seemed-
mentioned was the YMCA.
Yep, the YMCA, we had mentioned that a few months ago. That also relates to the ESSER grant. We did put a little bit on the ESSER grant, but that also was not approved until after. I know Mary Beth had mentioned that we were over on that account, and that was because of that. I really don't have an explanation on why she did that.
All right, Vinny, I totally appreciate all of that. I just, if I'm the public looking in on this, it just looks like.
Anna, can I interrupt, because Superintendent Tracy would like to address
Yeah,
some of the
that's
things.
fine.
Yep.
The ESSER grant has come up a number of times. People should know that we put in $50,000 for tents in the ESSER 3. If you think back to the September meeting we had, that was submitted, I think, October 4th, and you know, we can't spend any of that money until we have it, even though we budgeted $20,000 for tents in the spring, the fall, and then another 30 for tents in the spring. We don't know if we'll need those, but we're anticipating that. And the YMCA piece, also in ESSER 3, we had a discussion, I want to say back on the second meeting in September as well about this, because there had to be some money moved. And then in ESSER 3, I added in another YMCA program for next summer. So we're allowed to extend that out. So I took advantage of that opportunity and just built it in the same amount, 35,000 or 40,000, into FY '23, so that we could offer that for our kids again without having to actually, we don't have to budget it in our overall budget.
Okay. Anna, go ahead.
Thank you all for that. I think, I guess it all makes sense. I guess the point I want to drive home, and I don't know if we can fix it moving forward, but from a budgeting standpoint, even if you subtract out the negotiations piece of it, which is significant, that's almost $400,000 of this unbudgeted amount. It's really frustrating to see that we have all these unbudgeted things. It makes me question, like, well, what on earth did we budget, right? Like that's a significant delta of what we budgeted versus not. And then, again, as a committee level, I totally understand we have to pay the bills, but I feel really powerless that if I didn't support one of these transfers or do something with it, like, at this point, there's nothing we could do about it. And it just sort of feels it feels fatalistic because I feel like I don't understand why our budget was off in these ways, and I want to figure out how we can try to avoid that from happening again in the future. Especially things that had nothing to do with COVID. The COVID stuff is different. I mean, I don't know. I'm frustrated that our budget is off by this far so early in the year. Like that makes me concerned about what else is working in the budget that we're unaware of. And I appreciate that you put in there, proceed with caution. I think that's exactly right.
So if you remove the COLA and the COVID, you're talking about less than 1%. So that means the budget is 99.2% accurate.
Okay, thank you. Vinny, can you move it to the slide so that we can have the motion?
I've got it.
Oh, okay. All right, Jen, go for it.
I move that the Hamilton Wenham Regional School Committee approves the fiscal year 2022 operating expense budget transfers as recommended herein by the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Administration and as presented on the previous slides entitled Transfer Number 1, Transfer Number 2, Transfer Number 3, and Transfer Number 4.
Second.
Second by Michelle Horgan. Is there further discussion? Okay. All those, oh, you have a discussion? Jen?
I understand why Anna's frustrated. I think we need to be careful that the frustration gets aimed at the person responsible. I don't think Vinny or Superintendent Tracy were responsible for these mistakes. So I think, again, we just need to make sure that we're not taking out our frustration on them because it seems like they're already planning in advance so that this doesn't happen again.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I don't know that we need to belabor. I don't know that many of these would be, in my mind, mistakes necessarily. They're things that occurred. So, okay. Anna.
I just want to offer clarification to what Jen said. I completely agree. That's why I sort of started by saying this isn't really directed at Vinny or Superintendent Tracy. I completely agree with you. It's just frustrating. And I agree with Vinny that it's, relatively small percentage. I guess I just don't like unexpected things that seem like they could have been foreseen. That's really my high level statement is it seems like we should have been able to foresee some things, but I do appreciate that it's a small amount, but I also appreciate that you inherited this budget fully and you're simply executing it, and I know that, and we're all in it together. So I appreciate Jen saying that.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor? And that is unanimous of the 6 members present, and the motion passes. Okay, thank you, Vinny, for all of that. Okay, Eric, we are ready. We are moved up to the review of our face covering policy as we do at every meeting.
Do you want to put that one up?
What was that?
Do you want me to put it up on the screen?
If you can. but
Sure.
I think everybody's probably got it, but. Anna, Eric is just putting up the data dashboard, which I think is Exhibit 2.
Yep. So the one thing you'll notice, and I try to stay in touch with our nurses a couple times a week to figure out some of these numbers. As I've said before, these numbers come from a document that's shared with me from the Wenham and the Hamilton town nurses. This is not a school department information. So I'm grateful for them for keeping it up to date and for giving me the access to be able to jump into this. So our cases are dropping in or the same in our communities. So right now we're looking at in Hamilton, the town of Hamilton, over the last week, 2 cases within the town, new cases. Town of Wenham, 1 new case. And then the aggregate, over a 14-day period is 10 cases, 0.7%. Positive cases at the school in the last week, 0. Pool testing, the last group was 126 pools. And then the percentages of vaccinations, you will notice, the one that stood out to everybody was the Cutler, and the 80% range is now up to 96.84. Some of that is data retrieval. As I think I mentioned earlier, a number of our teachers don't live in the state. So if they got vaccinated in another state, they wouldn't come up in the mass system that our SNAP system is linked to. So with the recent policy decision that you made regarding requirement of vaccination, people have started to upload their cards into our SNAP system following the instructions that went out with that memo about a week after you had determined that stance. So that's where our data is, and again, we're not seeing a lot in school. We are seeing some cases at home, but not coming to school. They may get identified at home over the weekend, and they tend to keep them at home. There are a few cases like that around our districts, but there's been no huge increase anywhere within our system. So what we're doing is working.
Okay. So are there any questions from the committee? Jen?
Again, this is related to this. With the holidays coming up, do we need to develop or reinforce some type of travel policy for people who decide to go out of state for Thanksgiving and or Christmas?
So I would say unless we're going to create our own town policy, there isn't a requirement for the state of Massachusetts or for DESE on travel right now. I mean, we would certainly recommend to people, please double check, get tested. It's just there's nothing that's in place right now for us to lean back on to say, yes, the state is recommending it or the Department of Education is recommending it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. A couple of the universities I work at have travel policies, so that's why I was
my
asking.
daughter's school does too.
Other questions? Anna?
What percentage of our overall student population is participating in the pool testing right now? Do you know?
So if I were to guess, there's 126 pools with about approximately 7 to 8, sometimes 9 in a pool. So if you do that math, you're looking at probably 45% across the district.
And that includes staff, right? The 7 or 8.
Some staff members, some staff members are in there. Not a ton, but some staff members elect to be in the pools. But I don't know, have an exact count. I could certainly get that for you, but.
No, I was just curious, like the rough percentage. What did that yield?
And similarly, are the pools skewed towards elementary, or are they participation-wise?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
That they would be skewed, but they actually increased last week. We had 4 extra pools, so there's approximately 40 extra kids, roughly.
Other questions?
Can we
Michelle?
maybe ask our teachers union to maybe do another poll of their staff members and maybe have it be specific to the schools that are at the higher rate, high school, and see what their comfort level is for mask versus unmasked?
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, And again, it might, like Jen was saying, it might not make sense with the holidays coming up in the next 6 weeks. But maybe just get a pulse.
And Michelle, I want to thank you for that. I think you were the one that had this agenda item be added to every meeting. And I think it's a really important thing to get, I think, continue to get information and be really forward-looking. One of the things I would want, you know, at some point, it's likely that we're going to need to have another mask discussion policy, and gathering information is important. To my mind, it would be important that we do that in a way that, you know, so that we have as much information as possible.
Inclusive.
Inclusive, and as much information as possible, and yeah, and you know, so that no one is feeling like that things are coming at them too quickly for them to process or to make input. So, thank you.
Have we heard from DESE? Does the middle school and high school count as one building or two?
Determined on a district level. It would be determined at the district level. So in some cases where the buildings are actually connected together and kids cross over in you know, like Georgetown High is, Georgetown Middle High School is the only one I can think of right off the top of my head. They have 7 to 12, and they kind of intersperse. We have a fairly distinct separation between middle and high school, the major shared area being the library. So that would be something we would talk about at that point. Like, how does that impact kids? What does that look like? Does that become a masking zone? Something like that. There's a lot of options, I think, to look at. And I know the kids are writing about it in their school newspaper, and they're reaching out to ask questions, and I think it's important to give them a voice in the conversation. I think, you know, maybe along with the staff, kind of reaching out to people in the community as well, in the school community, to get that kind of general feeling of masks versus no masks would be important, if that's all right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right, next up is an update on the district goals.
Thank you very much. We'll roll through some of the things that are happening. There's a lot going on, as usual. We've been very busy for the first 11% of the school year, as Vinny mentioned. Portrait of the Graduate, we went through some of the feedback from last session to try to get a feel for where people were. People had homework assignments. They were, you know, submitting a 50-word response to the hopes, dreams, and aspirations. We also, aggregated and disaggregated some data related to the landscape shifts that we talked about during that first session. So we now have kind of a generalized idea of where people are focused. And not unusually, our group is very much focused on the human side of what's going on for kids, and I think that's huge. You know, if I were to pick some direction to go, that's the direction I would have gone in. And it certainly makes sense coming out of COVID and kind of being in lockdown and dealing with all those issues that we went in that way. So they'll be meeting again on the 27th, next week. All members, they'll be reading this Grit and Greater Good. It's an article for each of the 50 members to read as part of a discussion next week, and we'll also start to bring them into part 2 of expanding on the landscape discussion, and now talking about integration of technology and how technology impacts our kids and their futures.
Could you share those articles with your weekly updates?
Absolutely.
People who aren't part of that group might be interested.
Absolutely. And we'll put out the information within the superintendent's updates, so that people can actually see, you know, here's the first chart. Like, you'll see tomorrow's update, there'll be this article plus there's a bar chart that I think is important for people to see, like where the group of 50 lean towards. DEI, lot going on there. We did the first PD for staff on the 13th, 191 people in a Zoom. That actually was very well managed and went extremely well. I was a little nervous about that big of a Zoom call, but it was handled well by Regis and Stacy. They really took some time to organize it and make sure that things went smoothly. We have our leadership team. You'll actually notice we added a B to the DEI. DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, and that's a piece that we've been encouraged to add in our conversations from the Journey Partners, Equity Journey Partners, Regis Shields. She built that into the first training, and it was really good. It was actually good to kind of bring that to light. So the first committee meeting was on the 20th of the DEIB committee. They just kind of set their norms and did their general introductions. They'll start to plan out what the equity audit is. I think we need to do a little education first before we jump into it. It's important to lay out for the community so that they understand what's happening. There are some people who didn't get picked for the committee, for example. They're a little bit down and they didn't get picked, but we still have opportunities for them in this process because there'll be a good number of focus groups over that kind of 3.5, almost 4-month period to gain information. So their insight will still be useful and very much needed. And then the DEIB committee will continue to meet the first Wednesday of each month. November 3rd, they combined the advisory committee and district leadership. They're doing a visioning session, and that's really kind of what it should be and how it should look based on what the consultants have laid out for us, so that everybody has an understanding at the district leadership level. And then November 12th PD is the all-day PD. That will be a really deep dive. And we're doing that in split sessions. So we have I believe it's the elementary going first in the morning. They'll be doing a number of different groups. And then it'll flip in the afternoon. There'll also be sessions at the secondary level. Same sessions, just different building locations. So that's exciting to kind of finally be up and running. And then the PD plan outline, which was laid out by the group, by the DEI group, and it gives a basic, excuse me, I can't open it, there we go, basic outline of what's generally going to happen across this whole process, including the meetings through the year, the 4 sessions, and then also the work that will be done at the school level. So there's a lot going on there. And then teaching and learning, the MTSS piece at the elementary. This is a fascinating thing for me to be involved in, not being a secondary person. It's been interesting, and I'm grateful for Jen Clifford and the elementary principals for kind of leading me through this as well, because it is it's really interesting with the data that they already have, the data that they've already collected in that first round. And I think Dr. Carr may have asked the last time, okay, when do we see that kind of next set? And I believe we'll collect data near the end of December, within December, and then do the comparatives. And that'll give us a good idea of the resiliency of our kids being back in school. So Early Bird, which is a dyslexia screener, that was administered. Dibbles is finished, and that's the one piece that they were comparing yesterday during their professional development time. They went into grade level teams, and they actually looked at that student level data and tried to identify trends or even individual issues, so much so that in one case, a student came up that was highlighted based on scores that may need to be plugged into a different approach. And that was just based on looking at the initial data that was picked up. So I think that's important for us to know that we're already picking up some of those kind of missing pieces, if you will. And they'll continue to do that through the school year. There's the 3 different data collections. We've joined the Mass Literacy Support Network, and Jen is involved in that group pretty heavily. She's worked with them in previous years, but it's one of the things you apply to and try to get involved with. So we're getting some support from them as well. And then the instructional coaches are inventorying the district resources to teach reading. skills pre-K to 5. And this is what I talked about, doing the same thing at each building. We don't do that now, and we're finding that we do it differently even in the same building. To no one's fault. It's really just not been as organized as it has been. There's a lot of like study groups occurring about the science of reading. There's opportunities for teachers to grow in particular areas while they're doing this work. The coaches have done a great job ramping up and getting all of the pieces in place and resourcing and then helping teachers to understand what they have or reaching out and try to find out what they need. We're kind of in that what they need mode, looking at, even when you're looking at like disability categories, or disability, program categories, like what type of program are kids involved in? Are they getting the same services? So that inclusion and equity piece is starting to shine through for us in this work, just kind of naturally. So the secondary level, they just completed a curriculum audit. That was one of our benchmarks on the district goals, 10-15. We will present that, I believe it's at next meeting. I believe it's in the first meeting in November. To show you what it looks like and how they're using it. And they've actually come up with a couple of other steps. The curriculum leaders at the high school have really been focused on this, understanding the connection and ES coming up. But also for their own, I think for their own edification, they've been able to say, all right, we have this audit and tells us what to do. How do we help teachers now take that to the right step? So they've developed this counter sheet that does, kind of puts parts of our curriculum in 2 frames. And they happen to be kind of in a red mode or a green mode. If you're in green mode, you're really just kind of continuing to update. If you're in that red mode, there are some things that are missing in the UDB charts or something missing in the design of your overall lesson. So that work continues. And again, the action plans that are being developed under the leadership of the curriculum leaders and the middle and high school principal. They have taken that piece over, the curriculum piece, and really starting to kind of get it super organized enough so that they can lay out their timeline. And they need to also work with the PDC, Professional Development Committee, to find enough opportunities to do that work during our Wednesdays when we have that time period. So that's where they're at now. The World Language Study Group, they had their first meeting, and it was kind of generalized introductions, and here's where we're going. Second meeting, drafting questions that they want to send out so that they can get a kind of an overall picture through the community of what parents, students want. They also are reaching out to other districts to see what types of models they have in not only similar districts, just localized districts. They may be bigger school systems, but they just still want to identify what kind of models are out there. And then the athletic and learning facilities piece, there has been an agreement executed with Gale to perform phase 1 of planning for tennis courts, improvement of the softball field, and update pricing for the entire project. It's been, I think, 3 years. It was almost 3 years, so it needed to be updated, plus the addition of the tennis court and the softball field were not in the first one, so there was money set aside to do that. So Tom has executed that agreement. And then working with the facilities group and identifying some community volunteers to take part in some of the work, and that'll be occurring along this kind of new trajectory. We have to start actually opening up the door to say, what type of fundraising will occur, what community aspects will be involved, how do we connect to them. I got to tell you, from my perspective, I've learned that we as a school district have some wounds to heal. There are some sore spots in both communities related to past treatment, and I think that's important. And I've in every case so far, I've requested to meet with boards individually where that's come up, because I think it's important to hear them out, find out what kind of the grudge or what they're upset about, and then to build on that. So that's part of this process. It's actually helpful to me to get into boards that I wouldn't otherwise be connected to, but that can help us in the future growth of the district. And then the MSBA, the project, Zoom meeting was last Friday, and they just got general information from us and kind of talked us through the process. And then yesterday, we met with them at the Cutler School and toured each of the elementary schools over about a 2-hour period. They video things like places that we want to identify as, look, this is an issue, these are problematic areas, these are some things we're having trouble with. And then we'll continue to fill them in on data. So now we're playing the waiting game for the next 10 weeks. And that will be, we'll have a determination of, yes, we'll invite you in the process, or reapply again in March. So, and of course, we'll get feedback from that whole process as well. But we're keeping a positive eye out for it. I think we're going to, positive energy, as we say in my house. We always want to be thinking positive. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to kick this project off, because no matter what, it's going to be 5 to 7 years out. It's still going to be a long ways out, and there are a lot of discussions that will occur, not only with us, but also in the communities before we even get there. Again, that whole transparency thing. What does it mean? Why are we doing it? What does it look like? How do we kind of meet the requirements of the regional agreement, et cetera, et cetera. So there's kind of the bigger picture will come once we hear back from MSBA. And that is it for this week.
Okay, that was a lot. Thank you.
There's also, the schools are actually running too. So in case anybody is wondering, like, the teachers are going 100 miles an hour, really doing great things in the classroom, and all of these things occur outside of the classroom. These are not taking over for anything. So it's important to note that people are putting in the time, and I appreciate it. There's a ton of work going on here, and I think it's important for us to recognize every time people are doing that, they're really above and beyond, working hard towards these goals.
Thank you. Do people have questions? Anna?
Thank you. I have 3 questions. So one of them is about the MTSS, and this is just sort of, you might not have an answer yet, but I know that our MCAS scores from last year started to roll in. Has there been any analysis done on those to see if there's any trends or something coming out of that data? I don't necessarily put all my faith in standardized tests, but they are an interesting data point. Has anyone discussed what's going on or what the data might show for our kids in our district from last year?
I have reviewed all of the MCAS data for the district, and it's cursory review. I did not sit there and go point by point, but it's no different than what you've read in the paper. There's definitely the identification of learning loss across the district. I say that delicately because I don't 100% buy it, and that needs to be public because the tests were different. They're comparing data from very different tests to 2019. So in some cases, our kids only took a portion of the test or one segment of the test, and those results are being compared with a full testing cycle of 2019 because in 20 we didn't do it. So I agree, and I think the data points are interesting, and that type of data is good to use in conjunction with the data we're gathering now through especially the elementary levels. It's important to look at those kind of side by side. And a couple of our principals in conversation really want to work towards, okay, what can I do as an instructional leader to drive that change in particular buildings? We know some buildings have been consistently down in mathematics, for example. That's important for me and the particular principal of that building to focus on, even though the data is not, I mean, the state really compared apples and raisins. It is bizarre to me statistically. If you know anything about statistics, it's not statistically appropriate to do what they've done, and that's fine. But I think the data points are important to look at and use, and then compare moving forward. So there's some interesting reports that the state does in the Edwin system that we can go in, and they break down to the classroom level and even the teacher level if we want to be able to say, okay, what's happening in different locations. We can compare locations like buildings and things like that. So there's really some opportunity there. I just really put that warning out. The comparison is statistically not appropriate in my opinion.
Totally. And then two sort of related questions to the DEI update. So you made reference to some sort of document that has like an overall plan or schedule or what the cadence of activities is going to be. Is that something that you could share either with the public or with the committee? Because I feel like even though we're getting these great updates, I still feel like I don't entirely understand all of the activity that's going on in the district. There's clearly a ton going on, but you tell it to us here, and I'm writing furiously, but if there actually is like a document with a roadmap that's been provided, I would love to see it in writing so I could think about it and understand what's happening. So that's, I guess, more of a, so does something like that exist?
Yes, it's actually on the document I'm reading from, and I can share it out to the committee first thing tomorrow morning.
I would love that. And then related to this, and I guess this is a little bit of self-accountability for us as a committee, I feel like this amazing process is happening to every other part of the district except for the committee. And as one of the primary stakeholders, one, I'm feeling a little bit left out. There's this great DEI work, but if you're not part of any part of it, a teacher, like we as a committee haven't participated in any of the trainings. And I just want to be mindful that the MASC resolution we all adopted last year talks about annual training on bias and DEI issues also for the committee. Is there at some point a plan to have some of the energy and capacity of that sort of $75,000 or $80,000 we're spending on the partners? Are they going to work with us? Should we be soliciting our own trainings? Should we be budgeting for it? Because we as a committee haven't done anything other than make it a goal and then listen to updates. So where is our action item? Because I would love to get a little bit more personally involved because I'm frankly feeling a little left out.
So,
And that bothers me.
can I jump in?
Go ahead.
There are two approaches to that. You could do it as a committee, but I would suggest you join focus groups and be involved in the focus groups, because I think it's important for not only you to hear kind of what the community is saying, but also to be able to kind of give the community your feelings and opinions around those things as the drivers of what's going on. And certainly there will be opportunities for school committee, if you want a singular specific training, we can set that up there's no issue with that. It's not a problem. We really want to do this as a community, and in that sense, inviting you into those processes as a member of the community rather than as a member of a school committee. But if you see that differently, please let me know, and we can make the adjustment. It's not a major issue, and I think we'll also see some opportunities as we get into the equity part of it for school committee members to be parts of that as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's great. I guess one thought is sometimes you're going to get a little bit of different input from the community if a school committee person is there or not there. So, I mean, I think we should. I feel like it's more of an and or a both. And then the other thing is just in terms of our own accountability, you know, we've all sort of pledged that we're going to do this. We're going to do training annually. But right now there's no way to measure that we've actually done that as a group. So maybe that's a discussion for you know, a future topic or a retreat or something. But I think it would be good for us to walk the walk. We're asking all these other people to go through training and do the work. I think it's really good for us to also do that ourselves, not necessarily as like part of the committee. Like, I think the school committee needs to do its own training and do its own work. And so far we haven't actually undertaken that as a discrete item. So topic for future meeting, maybe.
Go ahead, Eric.
So one of the things I would say to that is I will make that happen. I don't want it to just float away. We will make it happen. We'll make sure it happens, and certainly I do want you to be involved in those community level discussions as well. You know, just as community members, as people who have children in the school system, I think it's important. So we'll do both.
Yeah, I want to
Julia.
echo what Anna said, because I do feel like I've been hesitant to participate because I don't want it to look like it's the school committee organizing this committee, right? So I feel a little conflicted on what my participation should be. But I completely agree that we set it as a goal for us as on a committee level. So we need to own up to that and have accountability.
Absolutely.
Have accountability for that. But thank you for inviting us into the focus groups. So.
Okay. right. Other questions or?
Oh, wait, I have one more question. So when they are doing the audit, is the audit really just, is it talking to the community, doing surveys? Is it targeting people, calling people on the phone, going into schools? What is it, or we don't know that?
It'll be a combination of
We
things.
don't know
but
that yet,
The
yeah.
primary piece of it is in-person focus groups.
Okay,
So there'll be targeted focus groups that they'll invite people into, and they'll be led by Equity Journey Partners, and they have a process that they use already, and we'll do that for different groups. So the student group might be separate from a parent group, might be separate from, maybe even a secondary versus an elementary type of a group. So I think that's part of the DEI committee's work,
yeah.
is to lay out what that looks like. And even though we have a general proposal from Equity Journey Partners, like this is what this should look like, which we're going to publish out in the next probably month or so to say, here's what an equity audit is, here's why we're doing it, and then kind of lay out that piece of it. I think it's important for us to educate the community, because without that education, people might take a side that may not be appropriate for really when we're just kind of gathering data and looking at it, kind of looking inward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Looks like we're ready to move on, I think. Okay, committee reports. Capital Finance, do we have a report?
Yeah, that would be me.
Okay.
So we did vote in new officers for the Capital Finance Committee. I got nominated and elected president, and Julia got nominated and elected as secretary for the group.
Okay.
We heard a presentation on an energy performance contract review on how much energy we are wasting and how much we could be saving by updating things like solar panels and LED lighting and elements of our heating systems. We went through the budget with Vinny to discuss the COLA and some of the other issues that were there, and we did a capital needs assessment review.
Great. All right. And do you have first, do other people have questions? Do you have another scheduled meeting?
Yes, November 10th. That's also the day we'll be meeting with the other two town boards. So it's the tri-board meeting as well.
Oh, my question is, when do I need to submit the minutes?
I try and do it within
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Policy, do we have an update?
We will next time. We meet on Monday. We have a massive agenda, so policy will have all kinds of fun things to talk about, but we're meeting on Monday at 6 o'clock. The agenda was posted.
Okay, thank you. Negotiations, we do not have an update. It's just me here. The rest of my committee is not here right now. We don't have an update. I am still waiting to schedule our negotiations with the custodial union. And I'll let you know when that happens. Okay. My chair's report, I think, one thing I do want to let you all know is that I will be not here at our next meeting because I will be attending the MASC conference, which when we did the schedule, we did actually know that it was a conflict, and the schedule just didn't really allow for any other thing. So I will not be here, and I think Anna will be running the meeting. She's looking ready for that. Excellent. What else? I have, as you, I did want to let you know that the master planning, I'm still, participating in the master planning. They are having on November 13th. There's going to be a public opportunity for the public to participate. That I don't actually have any documents yet but we'll have something to put out to the public, give an opportunity give some feedback to the master planning. I'm sorry, that's just for clarity, that's a Hamilton master planning. Eric and I did do we met a sort of just introductory, Vinny was there, and Eric and we had some introductory meetings, getting ready to talk about the budget with the FinCom and the town managers, and the town manager, administrators, and the select board members. Really looking forward to, having lots and lots of dialogue and continuing what we got feedback that last year was a more collaborative process and more transparent process, and looking forward to trying to build on that. Our next, and then I think Jen just mentioned that on that same day, I think November 10th, we're going to have I don't know what do we call it? They called it
The tri-board.
All board.
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
all board.
Both towns.
Yep.
Yep.
And that is, just for committee members, I think I did send that out to make sure you put that all on your calendars on the 10th. I think that's it. Anyone have any questions? Okay. Topics for future meetings. I did write down, Anna, and I know that the superintendent wrote it down too on the school committee training for the DEI, which I guess is DEIB. No.
B.
Yep. Michelle?
Looking at the agenda, it could either be the 4th or the 18th. We can do an update on the athletic facilities. Superintendent Tracy gave us one, but we can go more in depth. We did have a meeting in September, and we have another one scheduled for the 1st, so I'm fine if the 4th is full to move it to the 18th, if that fits better.
Okay.
Either one.
Yeah, so we'll look at it and get back to you. And I'm sorry, tell me exactly what you're looking for, an update on the...
The athletic facilities, what we've, who we've met with, and what steps we've taken.
Okay.
Do that on the 4th.
We could do that, okay.
4th.
Yeah,
Fourth.
we can
fourth?
probably do
Okay.
that.
Yep.
Okay.
I know we reviewed the high school handbook. Do we also have to review the middle school handbook?
I do not think so.
No.
That would be something I would normally look at Michelle Bailey and ask her, but I do not think we do.
So Bailey
guys
could
did
read it
last
in the law, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, the law specifies the high school handbook.
Okay, but we did do the committee did do the middle school handbook last year. That's what.
Did we?
I don't think so.
I don't think
I
so.
can look.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
We didn't? Okay.
I don't think so.
Thought we did.
This is where we need Michelle, but I do not think so.
Legally, the high school handbook is supposed to be the one that's reviewed.
Okay.
I'm not aware of the one, but I can look back through some of the meetings to
I
see.
could be mistaken as well.
Yeah, we all could be. Last year was pretty hectic, so,
Could have been 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been, is that possible that it was more than a year ago? Like, it could have been 2 years ago? Yeah, so. Anna?
It's not so much a new or an old, maybe just a reminder, and I'm hesitant to open up this can of worms because I know it's fraught with high emotion, but I want to talk about the logo a little bit, only in the sense that we sort of tabled it and it's still sort of out there whether or not we're going to do a redesign or not. But on a more specific level, I have noticed around town that there are some newly made signs at various facilities. Maybe they're town. I think there's one for certain at Pingree, I think at Patton. I haven't been back to the high school to double check. But there are new signs made that show the general with the weapons with a mask on, saying, "Mask up, Hamilton, Wenham." And I know that we had been assured years ago that people were not using the logo with the weapons anymore, but we clearly have new signs being made by some semi-formal entity. So I don't know if we can try to remind people, if you insist on using the logo, which has not been formally retired, to please not use it with weapons. I thought that was sort of already settled. So I just wanted to draw people's attention to that. I'm not sure if that's a question for the towns or for Tom or wherever, but Jerry still has guns in many implications that are on town and school property, and that's worrisome to me.
And I'm sorry, I thought initially that you said those were town property. Did you say they were on the school property also?
I haven't been back up to high school to see, so it might not be it might not be at the school. So I guess then the question is that something that we can ask the towns to not do? I mean, these are like public parks where everyone is playing. It's the General's logo, it's the school's logo. Like, I don't know who really has copyright, IP ownership of Jerry the General with the holsters. I guess my point is that logo's not being retired with the weapons, and someone in a municipal sense is still making signs using the school district logo with weapons. And I feel like that I thought we had decided that had happened years ago, that people were not supposed to be using the logo with weapons in an official capacity.
All right, sounds to me like there's two different things there. One is a question about that maybe the superintendent could just look into or ask someone to look into, the signs around town. It's a separate, separately, I hear you asking that as a potential topic for a future meeting. You're looking at whether or not the committee would like to take on the task of
just
considering a
retiring
redesign.
the cartoon general. I know we had talked about it. We had sort of an intense conversation during a prior school committee meeting, and there was some conversation about it, but I don't think we really ever reached resolution on it. So, and it may be that nobody else wants to take action on that, but I'm still interested in having that conversation about not again, for clarity in the public, not getting rid of the generals, just the cartoon drawing of the general itself, and using something that is inclusive, gender neutral, more modern in design, etc.
All right, thank you. All right. If anyone has anything else, otherwise I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved at 9:20.
And
Is that seconded by Julia? All right. All those in favor? And we are adjourned.